We are live.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October 7th, 2020 meeting of the Durham's Joint City County Planning Committee. My name is Charlie Reese. I'm a member of the Durham City Council, and it's my privilege to serve as the chair of the Joint City County Planning Committee this year. We are going to start going through our agenda now, and Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll.
Councilmember Reese.
I'm here.
Commissioner Jacobs. Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Commissioner Reckow.
Here.
Councilmember Middleton.
I'm here.
Commissioner Howerton.
Here.
Planning Commission member Busby.
Here.
I guess that's everybody. Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next agenda item is any adjustments to the agenda. Does staff have anything they want to change on the agenda this morning?
No, sir. Good morning, everyone. Staff has no adjustments today.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Next up is announcements. I have two announcements, and then I'll find out if my colleagues do. First of all, I want to say congratulations to Sarah Moreno Young, who is our new Joint City County Planning Director. This is the first Joint City County Planning meeting since her appointment, and I know all of us are very, very excited about bringing your level of expertise in planning, but also your experience here in the Durham community to bear on the big issues that we have in land use and planning. So, Ms. Young, I want to thank you for your willingness to serve, congratulate you on your appointment, and give you an opportunity to say a few words, if you'd like, about your new tenure.
Thank you so much for that. I just want to say that, I'm really excited. I've been here for a long time, but I'm looking forward to many years continued innovation and pushing the envelope and engaging our community. And so I'm just really grateful and humbled for the opportunity to serve in this way.
Well, thank you again, Sarah, for your willingness, and congratulations. We're looking forward to big things. My next announcement is to let you all know that we have a new member of the Joint City County Planning Committee. As you may know, the City Council recently appointed new council member Pierce Freelon to fill the vacancy created by the appointment of our former colleague, now North Carolina House Representative Vernetta Alston, to the North Carolina General Assembly. And Pierce's appointment to the City Council kind of created an opportunity for us to reassign some of our committee duties and our liaison responsibilities to outside organizations. And one of those changes was to bring my colleague, Councilmember Javier Caballero, onto the Joint City County Planning Committee. And just wanted to thank you for your willingness to serve on the committee. It may not be as exciting or hot, as the kids say. Actually, I have no idea what the kids say, as some of the other committees that we serve on. But I happen to think it's really important. So Councilmember, thank you for your willingness to be with us today, and looking forward to working with you over the next year. So, okay, well,
good morning, everyone.
Absolutely. So does anybody else have any announcements now that I've hogged up all the announcement time? Fantastic. Let's get right to the agenda. The first action item, and item number 4, is approval of the minutes from August 5th, 2020. Does anybody have anything they need to change or remark about the minutes? If not, I would love to see a motion to approve those minutes.
Well, Councilmember Reese, now that you just said that, it did give me pause, your last question to all of us. I think I'm correct in, well, actually, are we going to be meeting next month? Because I'm wondering when Commissioner Reckow's last meeting will be. We've been meeting every other month, right?
I think that's right. Right.
I think we should actually take a moment. Commissioner Reckow, can we see you? Are you visible?
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. I did not realize that. I thought we had one more meeting, but you're exactly right. We don't.
So
wait a minute. I don't want to be have my meeting be too early here. When is the first Wednesday in December.
It's Wednesday in December.
December 2nd.
Oh,
Okay, if that's
you're
the
not-
day of the meeting, I'll still be on board.
All right, here we go. We can hold our comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. I appreciate your vigilance. I had thought I had looked that up correctly and was saving that, but I appreciate you checking for us because Lord knows I'm not good with math or dates or anything except doing a lot of talking. So great. Now that we're done with that, can we get back to the minutes and see if anybody has any changes or corrections? Otherwise, if someone could move to approve the minutes, that would be awesome.
I
Motion
move
to
approval.
All right, moved by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Reckhow. Madam Clerk, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Reese,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Jacobs,
aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Commissioner Reckhow,
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton,
I vote aye.
Commissioner Howerton,
Aye.
Planning Commission Member Busby.
Aye.
Carries 7-0.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Next up on the agenda, item number 5, city and county managers priority items. Anything from the city manager's office?
Well, this is Don O'Toole from the city attorney's office, and there are no priority items for the city. Thanks a lot.
Close enough, Don. Thank you. Anything from the county manager's office?
Brian Wardell, county attorney, nothing from the county manager's office.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Before we go on to the next agenda item, could I ask Councilmember Caballero a rather embarrassing question? I know that Councilmember Freelon is trying to get on the call. Did you
I'm
send
about
him
to
that?
send it to him.
Great. Can you recall, he is the alternate and you're the actual member, is that correct?
I think that's correct. And I think
Okay.
for MPO, it's the opposite.
That's the embarrassing part is I couldn't.
But I could also be wrong and I'm an alternate, right? Like, because it's MPO and JC. Yeah.
All right, so what I wanted to say is that our new colleague, Councilmember Freelon, is attempting to get on the call. And as soon as he does, I'll make sure that folks know that he's here.
Hey.
Great.
He's here.
Oh, hi.
Thank you for resending the link. I was listening on YouTube, Charlie. Thank you for the welcome a little bit earlier. I just
Wow, that's technology at its finest. This is our modern age.
Yeah.
So welcome, Pierce. Councilmember Freeland, are you the member or the alternate on this committee? I keep getting it mixed up in my head.
That's a good question. I've got my sheet here. Let me take a peek at that while we're moving on.
This goes into the category of things the chair of the committee should have made clear to remember before the meeting started.
Joint City County Committee?
Yes, Joint City County Planning.
Yeah, I'm the alternate, right.
Fantastic. Okay, so I had that right. This is good. Welcome aboard, Councilmember Freelon. Look forward to serving with you on this committee.
Thank you.
All right. If Ms. Young, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for our clerk that the alternate does not, we don't need to call that name in the roll call unless the alternate is sitting in for one of the city members. So just so that, you got it, Susan?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Ms. Young. Excellent. Well, with all the preliminaries out of the way, let's get to our first substantive matter. This is item number 6 on our agenda, a comprehensive plan update, and I believe Scott Whiteman is here to talk to us about that.
Morning, Mr. Chair. My name is on the memo, but per usual, most of the work was done by somebody else. So I will introduce Lisa Miller and Carl Kolesna, who will do the presentation for you.
Fantastic. Good morning, Ms. Miller.
Good morning. Just pull up. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Miller with the Planning Department. Similar to our last update with you all, the work that went into preparing the memo and presentation was a team effort. I'll be talking to the slides. My colleague Brooke Ganser is helping out with the PowerPoint, and then we'll all be available for answering questions. You can go to slide 2. So just wanted to quick share, these are the highlights from the memo that we're going to walk through today to give you an idea of what we've been working on and what is upcoming in our work with the comp plan and our coordination with the transit plan. So we wanted to start with just a quick reminder of kind of highlights from our last update. We had been testing out some ways of trying to do equitable engagement, working with the community partners that were contracted with neighborhood improvement services over the last year, working with our outreach team, resident groups, and starting to think through some interim ideas around how the input from the listening and learning sessions could impact current development that's occurring, because we know there's that balance between needing to have something that impacts all the development proposals that are coming in and not slowing down, but also the challenges we have around continuing equitable engagement efforts in the middle of the pandemic. So moving on to our update for today. So we just wanted to refresh your memories. The reason, like part of what we're looking for as we come to you all when you meet every 2 months, not just to provide project updates, but also for you all to help ensure that the work that we're doing and the direction that we're heading is in line with your perspectives and recommendations. So we're seeking general guidance from you all as we continue relatively uncharted path in this work. So the first thing we wanted to share, we've been trying to make sure that we hear from perspectives of folks that we missed during the listening and learning round of engagement. You may recall, as we've shared out information from that kind of phase of engagement, there were 3 specific groups that we didn't hear from as much as we would have liked. That included youth residents, Hispanic and Latino residents, and residents in rural North Durham County. So to that end, we've been trying to fill some of those gaps in the resident input that we've gotten. At the end of September, we held a focus group discussion specifically for Hispanic and Latino residents to help us understand what needs and priorities they have for Durham's future, try to understand commonalities and differences from what we've heard so far. In that, Carmen Ortiz from Neighborhood Improvement Services helped us facilitate the meeting so that the discussion could be held in Spanish and had English translation provided for staff to take notes and respond to questions. It was our first time using Zoom's language interpretation functions, using multiple audio channels. We learned a lot and it went really well, so we're excited to get to use that more in the future for creating space where folks feel more comfortable sharing. We had 10 people in attendance. We heard a lot of the same themes that had come from the engagement ambassador sessions over the winter. We also asked for suggestions around how we can improve our engagement with Hispanic and Latino residents, and got some really positive feedback for using this forum. So I think we'll try and do that again in the future. We're also working with several different contexts to try and set up a similar focus group for rural North Durham residents, reaching out to the Ruritan clubs, the farm board, the county cooperative extension and open space offices, and then some contacts to our outreach team. So we hope to set that up soon. And then the final piece, we've been working, coordinating closely with the Office on Youth staff. If you recall, they had been working on the Youth Listening Project over the last year. We're hoping, similar to us, to be going out and engaging residents back over the summer to kind of ground truth or check their recommendations with the residents they engaged in their process before putting out the formal report. So we've had some informal discussion around the recommendations that have been drafted for that report to understand where there's overlap and commonality with the themes coming out of our engagement work. And as they finalize the report, which will follow some engagement that they do in October, we'll be working to incorporate the formal recommendations into the work for goals and objectives for the comprehensive plan. All right, so another piece of work that we've been doing is qualitative data analysis, which maybe doesn't sound super exciting, but our team has been really excited about this. It's been a really good experience of doing our work a little bit differently than we've seen other comprehensive plans done. So we realized that our previous plans for a lot of in-person interactive work, trying to co-create goals with the community that was planned over the summer, was probably going to be infeasible for many more months. So we started to work in depth with the input that we've gotten so far, both in the listening and learning phase over the fall and winter, and from the various pilot engagements that we held over the summer. So since mid-August, we've been working through a qualitative data analysis process under the guidance of Erin Parrish with the Office of Performance and Innovation. We were working towards creating community goals, but analyzing comments from the listening and learning engagement pilots, street shares, and focus groups, starting with the needs and priorities of those that we've typically not included in the process in the past to ensure those voices are heard. So looking at, what did we hear out of the engagement ambassador sessions first, and then filling in with the rest of the input that we heard from the workshops and the online survey. We first prioritized drafting objectives around housing and transit, both because those were the two most discussed topics in engagement so far, and also to aid in our collaboration with the transit plan engagement and their timeline that's a little bit more constrained. So we're continuing this process of in-depth data analysis around what we've heard from folks around the additional topics that are brought up through engagement and need to be addressed in the comprehensive plan. So the objectives will be brought back out to the community in this next phase of engagement for essentially ground truthing, trying to make sure that we're understanding residents correctly, opportunities to make sure that the language is accessible and really reflects resident perspectives. And we are working with the outreach team to get their early feedback on possible objectives to help make sure that we've got a resident's eyes on it and thinking through it before we start making it more public. So in the Equitable Community Engagement Blueprint, coordinated engagement opportunities across departments and projects are recommended to create both more efficient and more effective opportunities for residents to be involved in these projects. So to that end, and also because of the ways that both of these plans are impacting our transportation future in interconnected ways, we've been pretty heavily coordinating with the transit plan team. Right now, that work is primarily around 3 engagement opportunities. There is a transit plan survey that opened yesterday. Hopefully you all saw the press release and share that around with folks. There are some planned focus group discussions for a little bit more in-depth conversation opportunities. And then our work with the engagement ambassadors in coordination together. So recruitment of the engagement ambassadors begins today, another opportunity to share around with folks. We sent out a message to our email list for Engage Durham this morning with some updates around our website, and our coordination between the transit plan and the comprehensive plan includes some information about recruiting ambassadors and a link to our website where folks can go and fill out the recruitment form. It's available in both English and Spanish, and we would love for y'all to share that out. I'm happy to drop the link in the chat after we're done going through the slides. So we'll be, one of the opportunities that this creates for us is we're able to stipend the engagement ambassadors through the transit plan consultant contract, and so address some of the concerns that come up from the city as we were directly stipending folks in the last round. So next slide. We know that you all know this and hear this a lot, I'm sure, but we just, a reminder that we're continuing to face challenges because of the pandemic and the uncertainties kind of in the months ahead. So things have been taking longer than anticipated during this time. Not just the work to prioritize equitable engagement, but also our work to coordinate across projects. So you'll notice the expected timeframes in our schedule in the memo this month have shifted since our last presentation to account for that. So our initial hope was to begin engaging residents around the transit plan and comp plan together mid-August. That work is starting this week, but that time has allowed, while that has delayed our work a little bit, that time has allowed us to get more in sync across the two projects and try and be more coordinated in the work that is going out for residents to provide input on. So our focus over the next 2 months is going to be continuing our data analysis work to draft potential objectives across all the different important topics for the comprehensive plan coming from the input that we've received so far, and then engaging residents on that work through the work of the engagement ambassadors, focused small group outreach, and digital engagement when we get that up and running. And in addition, at the request of the managers, we will be providing updates on the project to both the Board of County Commissioners and the City Council at your work sessions in November. And with that, we're happy to hear reflections, concerns, questions that you have either from the presentation or the memo to make sure that we're continuing on the right track with this work. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. That was a fantastic update on where we are with all this. Our agenda doesn't call for formal action today, but it does call on us to receive the information and provide feedback and guidance. So if anyone has any feedback or guidance they'd like to share with our staff on this, this is the time to raise your hand. Councilmember Caballero, go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for all this, and especially for the session that Carmen Ortiz helped organize. I saw a lot of social media about that, and I was very happy to see it. And I know that it's been interesting to hear in some spaces, there's a lot of kind of, oh, I think Zoom, even in an in-person world, will be a valuable tool. And I think for a lot of families, I know we talk about the digital divide, but in a lot of ways, virtual or digital meetings are easier for some families. They don't have to worry about transportation, especially if you add language support in. It's sometimes even more seamless than in-person simultaneous. So I just wanted to raise that because I know that moving forward, we're going to have, I think, some kind of hybrid, because once that digital divide, once folks have access to Zoom and other features like that, I think it really does open up the possibility of engagement in a way that, in person does not.
I think that's absolutely right. It's one of the things we've been thinking about as we start to look into the future, but have heard from a lot of folks, even on our outreach team, it's been easier for them to participate when they can, be at home cooking dinner with their kids, but carve out a little bit of space to participate. So I think you're absolutely right.
Great. Commissioner Jacobs, you were next, but Commissioner Reckow has some time constraints, and I'm hoping you'll agree to allow her to go next, if that's okay. Thank you. Commissioner Reckow, go right ahead.
Thanks, Charlie, because I am going to have to pop off for a little while. So thanks for the update. I just want to relay my strong interest, and I've talked with Sarah about this already. I'd like to see us do some social equity mapping as part of our data collection. And I guess, Sarah, you've already started collecting the data. Not sure it's been mapped, but I got interested in this because Wake County has a really great social equity atlas that's available on their website. And the MPO has done some of this with the social justice mapping that's required by the federal government. But I also have found a wonderful website called diversitydatakids.org. And they've actually mapped neighborhoods all across the country. as to the opportunities for children related to the facilities in the neighborhood, quality of schools, etc. I just think in this day and age that having very clear, easily accessible data of this ilk is very important. So I just wanted to put that forward.
I'm going to chime in real quick. I don't know if Lisa or Scott, if one of you want to talk a little bit about what we envisioned in terms of the equity indicators, which is, I think, exactly what Commissioner Reckow is talking about.
Yes, Sarah and Commissioner Reckow, we are working on developing a set of equity indicators that would be used as part of the comprehensive plan, and they certainly can be mapped. We haven't mapped them yet. We're still trying to find the ones that actually can show are useful for what for showing equity and inequities. We did about 2 years ago. We presented to the JCCPC a draft of a we called a displacement index, which was very similar in nature. However, what we found is by using census data and those sorts of things, which tend to lag by a couple of years, it was really good at showing us which neighborhoods had just experienced gentrification. It wasn't very useful at kind of planning for the future. So we're trying to find better data that's updated more frequently that we can use for the comprehensive plan and that we can use as to kind of test the policies and the land use map to make sure that it is furthering equity.
Well, I think in particular with this planning process being planning for the physical nature of our community, that the mapping, I think, would help us visualize how our physical plans intersect with this social equity issue. So just wanted to make sure that we think about mapping it as we do the work. Thank you.
That is a really great point. Thank you, Commissioner Reckow. Commissioner Jacobs, go right ahead.
Yeah, I have a few points I want to make, but I think what Commissioner Reckow brought up is really important. The environmental justice report that was just approved by the Durham, Chapel Hill, Carborough MPO is has really helpful information. And as a matter of fact, I asked that the maps be attached as an addendum to that report so that local governments could use them. And so actually, I would like to ask our staff, Sarah, if we could get requests that that report be shared with all the members of this group. And especially I want to highlight the maps at the back, because I agree with what Commissioner Reckow just said. It's one thing to have equity indicators, but it's another to actually visually look at a map and look at Durham and see where you see the concentrations of all of the different layers that are measured. And everybody's, processes information differently. Some of us are visual, and so I agree that especially with talking about transit and land use, it's important to really see that. And so if that could be shared with everybody, that would be great. Thank you. I have a question, Lisa, and I really appreciate how thoughtful and intentional you and everybody is being about this process. What is social pinpoint?
Sure, it's a long-awaited and I know we've been mentioning it on a number of occasions. So we actually went through a pretty rigorous process looking at different digital engagement tools led by Robin Baker with participatory budgeting, with several departments trying to look at where there's overlap in the needs that we have for ways to engage residents, and trying to find ones that are more intuitive and accessible. And it was one that I don't think our team had heard of before Robin brought it to our attention, but it has some of the ability to some of the aspects of participatory budgeting engagement that are not in lots of tools, but has two main functions that we were interested in. One is the ability for to overlay different maps and like different ArcGIS layers on a map to get comments on things like when we're starting to talk about what our future land use map looks like and what are changes that might be proposed, ways to get residents input on those that can be a supplement to hopefully in-person engagement. And they also have what's called an ideas wall, which is essentially sticky notes that you can, it can either be staff just sharing information that folks can react to and comment on, or it can be something where you're soliciting ideas and folks can share their own ideas and other folks can interact with those. So it's something we're looking at as supplementing and helping create some more interactive opportunities for folks who do have digital access.
Great, thank you for that explanation. And I really also appreciate the focus on qualitative versus quantitative. I think we're all starting to learn that it's not the number of respondents you get or the number of emails you get or the number of people that sign a petition, but really because now it's for some people it's very easy to do that, but really digging down and understanding it's more important to dig down, to even the way you're doing the focus groups, to get a representative group and to really dig into the issues more deeply. So I really appreciate that. Are you guys also working with the Bike Durham and their whole campaign for transit equity? Those folks, are they involved?
So we are involved with them in our work with the transit plan so far. I think they are helping with some of the work around identifying potential focus groups and some work around possible in-person engagement with the survey. And I think we're going to continue conversation beyond the transit plan, but around transportation equity. But we have not started that yet. So our coordination so far is just through the transit plan work.
And the other issue is, it's amazing right now because we've got the Triangle Bikeways survey is up, the commuter rail survey, and now the comp plan and the transit plan. So it is, it's good and it's bad, but so yeah, any ways that you can help somehow, even if people aren't going to necessarily fill out the surveys, if you can incorporate even asking people questions like, if there was a way to commute to jobs by bike, in RTP, would that be something that you would be interested in? Or if you could ride a bike to get to work, even in Raleigh, would you do that? Or if you could ride a train, would you feel comfortable with that? Would you be, and it would cost as much as a bus. If there's a way to just get very basic feedback about some of the basic issues, that would be fantastic, because again, I think a lot of folks are not going to go and fill out all these separate surveys. So I don't know what thoughts you had about how to actually integrate some of these things. Like,
So I can share the first step that we've taken. So obviously we're coordinating very closely with the transit plan team, but there's all these other transit projects. And so the transit plan team has primarily been working on coordinating with all of the other transportation projects. But what we've done for both, we've created a lot of updates to both the comprehensive plan website on Engage Durham and the transit plan website. One of the things shared there is kind of other opportunities to get involved besides the transit plan survey and some things that are planned and upcoming around the comprehensive plan. And so we've listed the different projects. We list, participatory budgeting and the Office on Youth's work, as well as all of those different transportation plans with links to more information and how to get involved. So I know it's just a first step, and we can definitely start looking at other ways that we can be asking those questions and sharing that input with folks. But that was a start, just trying to help folks make sense of how all of these different plans do or don't relate and whether we're talking to each other. So I know that's important to residents.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Any other committee members have any questions or guidance for staff on the update we've received on the comprehensive plan update?
Just some words of thank you, gratitude, and it was an exciting first meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Freelon. Yeah, if nobody else has anything they wanted to add, then I just want to say how grateful I am to staff for continuing to push this work forward. This is easily the most challenging time to be doing any kind of really deep and intentional community engagement that any of us have ever lived through. And so I think the creativity, the persistence, and the commitment of staff to make this work, even though we're in this unprecedented time, is just incredibly commendable and helpful and necessary right now. And I'm very mindful of the questions and issues raised by my colleagues this morning, and I know that staff is going to be working, is already working to find solutions to those and incorporate those into the work that goes ahead. And as the chair of JCCPC, I look forward to getting additional updates and being as helpful as I can be directly to staff as we try to move through some of these issues. So just wanted to put out my personal request that if there's anything that I or the city can do to push this work forward that we're not doing, I hope that you will reach out to me and let me know, because I don't know that there's very much more important on these issues that's happening right now than the work that you're doing with the comprehensive plan update. So thanks to Lisa and all the staff that are making this project work, even under these very difficult circumstances, and look forward to seeing, continuing to see you move and thrive in this work as it goes forward.
Thank you.
So if nobody else has anything else on this particular agenda item, we will keep rolling right ahead to item number 8. Lance, whoa, I skipped one. Item number 7, 160D updates. This has Michael Stock and Don O'Toole on the agenda. 160D, by the way, refers to a new set of state legislation that was passed, I guess, about a year and a half ago that makes certain changes to how land use and development operate with local governments. This update is designed to provide us with information about a omnibus set of changes, text amendment to our Unified Development Ordinance to account for that new state legislation. And I'll let Michael take it away from here.
Thank you very much, Michael Stock with the Planning Department, and I'm going to sign off on the video part of it. So as I've often done in the past, but I wanted to wave and say hi and show my face. As Councilmember Reese stated, this text amendment reflects a set of primarily technical updates to the UDO to reflect the new state enabling legislation under NCGS Chapter 160D. What it does is combine the planning and zoning enabling legislation applicable to counties under 153A and cities under 160A under the new Chapter 160D. So it's a unified and concise set of enabling legislation. I'm going to be concise. The updates are, as I said before, pretty technical in nature. The updates are required to be approved by the governing bodies per the statute, I believe by June or July or beginning of July of 2021. The statute gives leeway as to, obviously, to give leeway to different municipalities and counties to process these updates. These have been and are currently under review also by the city and county attorney's offices. I have received some comments from these offices. There's no substantial changes that are necessary based upon those comments, just some kind of technical rewording and such. Obviously also we will be updating all our forms and other items that reference the different state statutes. A couple things I do want to highlight in the changes, and then I will stop talking, are primarily process related. One big change that the statute now allows is appeals from Historic Preservation Commission can go straight to Superior Court. Before, they had to go to the Board of Adjustment, and as you may be aware, appeals from Board of Adjustment hearings go to Superior Court, and the new legislation recognizes that Historic Preservation Commission hearings that are also quasi-judicial in nature should have the ability to follow the same appeal path as a Board of Adjustment decision, and it gives that option to the municipalities and counties to do that. We're taking advantage of that for consistency and process improvements. Also, we are introducing constructive notice requirements for official interpretations to the UDO that would be posted on the site. So if an applicant files an official interpretation for a certain project, and that will be noticed on the site to give opportunity to review and appeal that decision. Also the ability to record special use permit approvals that was made explicit within the statutes also, and we're going to take advantage of that also. Again, it's a process improvement and make sure it's not only obviously approvals are housed in the planning department, but also recorded through the Register of Deeds. So it's also more available to the public as a whole. And there are a number of changes to that 160D bring about that aren't necessarily needed to be codified. Probably one of the biggest one that I can think of right now is how the Board of Commissioners and City Council, when they approve planning related items, the zoning map changes and text amendments have to go through the consistency statement procedure adoption and then the ordinance adoption. And the 160D legislation makes that process easier. You can do it under one motion. At times you could even forego doing the consistency statement if the minutes clearly reflect discussion about the comprehensive plan and public interest and such. So when the time comes, both boards will be advised of the new process, and we just want to try to make that just as easier and streamlined as possible without obviously while maintaining compliance with that statute. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for that presentation and for all the work that obviously went into putting the omnibus change text amendment together to make our Unified Development Ordinance comply with this new legislation. The agenda or the memo reflects that our job today on this item is to receive the report, provide comment to staff initiating the process to adopt these changes to the Unified Development Ordinance. So do I hear any comment for staff on the text amendment that's before us today? Commissioner Jacobs, go right ahead.
Thank you, Michael. I just have one basic question. Was there anything in here that staff was concerned about, or that, was a red flag, or anything that we should really know about?
Not that I can think of. If anybody else if Don or Brian can think of anything, but nothing that I can think of off the top of my head. And my review of the report that I provided you also didn't jog anything about that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Is Don going to pop in and talk to us about that, or?
Don, I was waiting for you.
Okay.
Sure. This is Don O'Toole from the City Attorney's Office. Just to follow up on that question, when this bill was originally passed in 2019, there were two parts to the bill. The second part, and that's what we're addressing today, really were viewed as, first and foremost, putting the city and county statutes together so it would be more simplified. And then the School of Government, David Owens, was very involved in this process. He viewed it as mostly just an update to the statute to clarify things, make it easier for people to understand what the statutes meant. But in 2019, when the session law was passed, there was also a part one, and that part of the bill was sponsored by the Home Builders Association, and that actually became effective in 2019. So to answer your question, any of the more controversial parts of Session Law 2019-111, we already dealt with a year ago. And to be quite honest, I can't even remember what some of those changes were. I know that the city didn't love some of those changes, but to be honest, I can't even remember what some of those changes were. But those were effective over a year ago, and we've already addressed those changes.
Yeah, and I would just say that I think the primary purpose of 160D is just to codify what is really already existing and put it in one format so that cities and counties are pretty much on the same plane with regard to how planning issues are dealt with, so that you don't have a lot of conflicts with cities and counties and what can and can't be done. So I think that's the primary purpose of it. Of course, the Institute of Government is a great resource for the 160D amendments and changes, and we've been dealing with it for the last couple of years. So there's nothing that Mike talked about that I hadn't heard about, or that wasn't previously discussed, or that would raise a red flag for the county.
Well, thank you, Brian and Don. I appreciate the history and the explanation. That really helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Next up is our resident planning commissioner, Brian Busby. Brian, go right ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say my recollection, just to add to what the staff said, was the state process really was a streamlining and of the regulations. And I think our staff have done a really great job of just encapsulating those. So I have no concerns with what they're bringing forward. So appreciate the work to streamline all of this and to be consistent with state law.
Thank you, Commissioner Busby. Councilmember Middleton, go right ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. Good to see everybody. Quick question in Article 12 under issues, where it says a technical update to apply the consistency with adopted plans to the entire UDO and not only subdivision approvals per 160D-704. Just my own clarification. What does that mean? Or is that saying that when we were passing consistency statements before, it was specific or germane to a, what does that mean? Explain to me what that means, please.
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button.
No worries.
Basically, it was just taking language that was specific to subdivision regulations regarding consistency to adopted plans that subdivision regulations could be held to, and applying it to other zoning regulations that were not subdivision regulations. It was just making it that language about consistency with plans applicable to all planning and zoning, not just subdivision.
Got you. Yeah, it's pretty much. I was reading it as I was wondering, could that be read as, you know, if somebody wanted to get really technical, that, well, you know, this is consistent with this part of the UDO, but not the entire UDO, and just a wonky question.
No, that's fine. That was a perfectly good question.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you, council member. Anyone else have any comments or questions for staff on this this particular text amendment? Great. Okay. Well, I will just say that this is probably some of the densest stuff that we have delved into as a committee since I've been chair. I want to appreciate my colleagues for their close reading and for their good questions, and obviously to the city and county attorney's offices and our planning staff. Thank you for all the work that goes into making these changes. You know, the folks in Raleigh like to pass legislation, and once they do, they're on to the next thing. But local governments like the city and county of Durham are the ones that then have to take that and make sure that our processes and ordinances comply with the mandates coming down from Raleigh. And so your work is really the piece that most folks don't really get to see. So thank you so much for that, and look forward to seeing this come through our agendas at the county commission and the city council.
Thank you. It should be going to the planning commission November, December. Not quite sure of our deadlines, and then hopefully the governing bodies early in the new year.
Fantastic. Sorry, I left out the planning commission there. I always forget that they get a bite at this apple before we do. So my apologies.
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. Next up on the agenda is item number 8, landscape manual revisions. Believe it or not, I'm very excited about this agenda item. And also excited to say that Jessica Dockery is listed on our agenda as managing this item. And if that's the case, please go right ahead.
Actually, it's Danny Coulter presenting this. And so, let me pull up a screen share, and I'm going to do a little slide presentation as well. Give me just one moment, and I will. Can you see full slideshow? Is it up? Great. Good morning. Danny Coulter, representing the Planning Department. What's presented today are the revisions to the Durham Landscape Manual. Last year, actually, members of the department were tasked with updating the manual from its initial adoption in December of 2005 and the last revision in April of 2013. Through efforts from members of the Planning Department, the Department of General Services, Landscaping and Urban Forestry Division, and through partnerships with various members of the Durham Environmental Coalition, we're hopeful that you'll support these changes. Through the course of the process, there were 4 areas to the revisions we felt needed to be addressed to bring the manual up to the current industry standards. 1 were text revisions, 2, UDO amendments and new planting installation certifications, 3, plant chart revisions, and 4, revised plant details and examples. The text in the manual was updated to reflect the current best industry practices. We removed recommended practices and revised the manual to only reflect required practices and techniques. Eco-friendly tips were also added to promote ecologically sound installation and maintenance practices, in addition to the water-wise and water conservation tips that currently reside in the manual. Through dialogue with our environmental coalition partners, there was a push to utilize more native species in Durham, which promote better wildlife habitat and ecosystems versus using non-native vegetation. And although not a direct revision to the landscape manual, this dialogue yielded future recommendations for some UDO text amendments, such as utilizing all native species in tree replacement areas and riparian buffer revegetation and mitigation. This dialogue also yielded the recommendation to require that a licensed landscape architect or licensed landscape contractor must certify that the correct planting practices in the manual have been utilized. Invasive species list was updated. We reviewed current allowed vegetation against local and national plant data. As a result, we expanded the prohibited plant list in the manual based on recommendations from urban forestry staff, the Durham Environmental Coalition, and NC State University resources. We reorganized the current plant tables and condensed from 8 large tables consisting of 248 pages down to 4 tables consisting of approximately 142 pages, and also adjusted the graphics for better legibility in order to provide the user with a more efficient process for plant selection. This way was accomplished, the way this was accomplished was to group all native and non-native species together, adding symbol keys for identification, removing the individual named cultivars, removing ambiguous designations, and streamlining the water-wise planting conditions and cultural notes information. And here's some examples. This is the current plant table formats with the planting conditions, cultural notes, individual cultivars shown. And this is the new tables for the trees, which is much more condensed and much more legible. Same thing with our shrub tables. Current format, new format, much more condensed. We feel that the user will have a much better ease of use through these charts. One thing we also did, the manual contained poor quality graphic details with illegible text, and the goal was to update these with cleaner and more legible details. We also wanted to modify all details to meet the current best practices in industry standards. So this is some of the current examples. You see a lot of these text was illegible in some of these examples. We've completely revised the graphics and made the text much more legible and brought these up to what the current practices and standards are. And finally, we had dialogue with our environmental partners, and we committed to revisiting potential updates on a 5-year cycle for the manual, which is much more frequent than has been performed in the past. This will ensure that any future potential invasive species can be placed on Durham's prohibited lists. And as the industry standards change, we can update the manual accordingly. And that's it. Staff is available for any questions on the presentation materials and materials that you've received. And I'll stop screen share.
Well, thanks, Danny. That is a fantastic presentation. Actually, I wasn't expecting a presentation, so that was really cool. Thank you for that. And thanks also for the work that went into these revisions to the landscape manual. It is, I guess it's a new addition to the landscape manual, technically. And want to ask, it's my understanding that according to our agenda, I moved away from it for a minute, says that our role today is to receive the information that you've given us and approve the proposed revisions. Is that our correct role today? Is that
that is my understanding.
Okay, great. Well, first I'll ask if any members of the committee have any questions or comments about the presentation we've received, the proposed new edition of the landscape manual, or anything about this agenda item. Commissioner Jacobs, go right ahead.
Well, I'm really excited about this, and I'm just thrilled as somebody who personally loves to garden. But it's just a great resource for our community. When I looked through it, it's, as you said, Danny, it's much more user friendly. I love the little section that had eco-friendly tips, and just the visuals. It really, to me, it read like something that is supposed to be useful and helpful to people. So I really appreciate it. And I think it's just really important. You know, every time that we have, you know, I guess one thing I learned when I was on the Planning Commission that always has stuck with me is somebody once said, you know, every single piece of land, it's either going to be developed or it's going to be protected. I mean, those are the two options. And so, you know, there's a limit on how much land that we're actually going to be able to protect, whether it's through conservation easements or parks or, whatever, but, or because they're critical watershed, and so they're protected through our ordinances. So most land gets developed. And so the things that everybody does individually within their own home, their own properties, or whatever scale of development, and that's where it really matters. And so, every time trees are planted, choices are made, it just really does have an impact on our ecosystem. We know with, butterflies and bees and birds, and invasive species, how important like every single action and choice is. So, and I think this is very empowering for us and can really help us transform our environment in Durham. So I'm very excited about it. And just to ask you, the focus is really on removing invasive plants. Is that right? Specifically?
It is not. We actually made several changes, not only condensing the plant tables, but we also revised a lot of the text to remove some of the recommended practices and regroup everything to make these a lot of required practices. But we did revise the prohibited plant list as well, so that we moved some things into strictly prohibited plant lists, that it just updated a lot of things to bring everything up to current industry standards. And I did want to give a shout out to some of our environmental coalition partners. They're the ones that came up with the eco-friendly tips. So we can't take credit for that. We had a good partnership with all of our Durham coalition partners.
Well, great. And we know that when community groups are involved, we end up with a better outcome.
Absolutely.
So I guess I also noticed was climate change and drought and things like that, things that are more resilient. Was that a part of some of the thinking? Deer resistant?
The native species, I think, are driven because a lot of the thought is that natives actually provide for better wildlife habitat and certain ecological systems to thrive. We do recognize that native species aren't as conducive in certain environments, like in, say in parking lot islands, things like that. They may not thrive as well. So there are certain instances where ornamental plantings are better suited. But there are certain areas we should really try to promote more native species. So that's why we looked at, really thinking about, orienting our UDO to maybe promote in certain areas, especially like things like tree coverage replacement areas, where we can get more native species to have things that tie into natural tree areas where you're replacing to get more of that natural succession that you're trying to promote. And maybe the areas like riparian buffers, where you're mitigating or riparian stream buffers after you've impacted those. Those kind of things just naturally, are suited to native species. But yeah, certain areas really may not be as suited for certain native species, but yes, there are definitely areas where native species should be promoted.
Yeah, and so I assume you worked with Trees Durham.
There were several Trees Durham, New Hope Audubon Society, Eno River Association, some representatives from them, and some representatives from Ellerby Creek, and even some of our independent consulting firms. Dan Jewell with Coulter Jewell Timms. We had Tim Sivers, Lynn Mitchell from Horvath Associates. We had input from even our consulting firms and our environmental coalition partners. So we had a good group of people in a lot of our meetings.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Kudos to you and everybody who's been a part of this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. Commissioner Busby, go right ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to say the same thing. I really appreciate the staff's work and then the collaboration with the various partners. I'm very supportive of this. The Planning Commission has this on our agenda for this coming Tuesday.
That's correct.
And I think just that time that you put into it, I did want to note the 3 citizens that have joined us today are all individuals that worked with the staff on this item. So I think it just reinforces their commitment. Barbara Driscoll, Lynn Richardson with New Hope Audubon, and Ricky White with the Ellerby Creek Watershed Association.
Absolutely. They were very instrumental in this.
Yeah, so thanks to all of them as well. And I'm glad to hear you're going to do this every 5 years. I think that's important to just keep this updated as we deal with the impacts of accelerating climate change. But
We
thanks.
recognize that we feel that's important.
Thank you, Commissioner Busby. Those are really important remarks. Councilmember Caballero, did I see you wave your hand there? Awesome. Go right ahead. The mic is yours.
I just wanted to say this is fantastic. I don't remember when on council, at some point we had an update and had a conversation during a work session about including more native plants, and just happy to see these updates. My one question is there going to be, I do wonder how many Durham residents know that this exists, right? Like as you're doing your own individual, with COVID, I've seen lots of folks putting in gardens and really trying to come up with creative ways to keep busy while staying more at home. And so how are we going to kind of get this messaging out? Are we going to utilize our community partners that you've listed? I think folks really want and are eager to try and be good neighbors and may not know where to start. So I hope that kind of communication effort is part of the.
It is a great tool. And you're right. I think the layperson doesn't really know that it exists on our planning web page. I do remember when the first inception of the manual was created, and it actually was due to the drought conditions back in the early 2000s. And there was a big push because of we created this WaterWise program because of the drought regulations that we had. And we did kind of have a public media push at that time. And I think there was maybe some publication to allow people to access it at that time on the city's website and on the and there may be I can't remember if there was any literature put out at that time to promote the WaterWise. I remember there was even a mascot. I can't remember his name now, but yeah. But you're right. I don't think that people realize that this is a useful tool that the layperson can even utilize and access.
In that regard, this is Brenda. Can it be sent out to the community neighborhood organizations just as an FYI?
So let me chime in, Danny.
Yeah, I was going to defer that to the planning director.
Sure. So that's a great suggestion. We can do a couple of things. We can share this on our weekly newsletter that goes out to the community. And then we can also share this with our public affairs offices, both the city and the public information office of the county, and see how they can help us kind of disseminate this information. Which, although it's primarily intended to be regulatory in nature, I think it is absolutely wonderful guidance for any homeowner, property owner as well. So we will work with our partner resources to get the information out more broadly. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair, may I say a couple of things here?
Yes, go right ahead, Commissioner Reckhow. The stage is yours.
Okay. I also want to thank the staff. I did not read this in its entirety, but I skimmed it last night. And I think Councilwoman Caballero brought up a good point. Following up on that and what Commissioner Howerton just raised, I'd like to suggest that the planning staff, if they haven't already, send the draft of this document over to Cooperative Extension. We have a professional there who helps people with landscape concerns, and then they also have master gardeners who are volunteers, and they actually do a great deal of outreach to homeowners regarding their landscape issues. So if we're not working with them already, it would definitely be fertile ground, pun intended, to work with them.
We will absolutely do that. Absolutely. Very good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reckow. Commissioner Jacobs, did I see you trying to get back in?
Commissioner Reckow just said what I was going to say, which is working with our cooperative extension and master gardener program. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other committee members want to weigh in on the landscape manual at this time? Great. Okay. Well, then let me just say a couple of things. My colleagues on the committee have already said a lot of wonderful things about it. I just wanted to highlight two aspects of this. You know, a couple of years ago, the city approved our sustainability roadmap, and part of that had to do with protecting our natural ecosystem here in Durham. Many of the revisions to the landscape manual that are in front of us today give effect to that promise and are yet additional steps on that sustainability roadmap, specifically around encouraging native species of plants where appropriate, as Danny said, because obviously a little island in a parking lot might not be appropriate, but there's lots of places where they are. And second, to prohibit invasive species that can be so damaging to our natural ecosystem here in Durham and around the world. And so I'm very grateful to staff for giving effect to the roadmap that we passed. And I know the county also agrees that that's important. And so just wanted to thank you for that. And also, Brian, you stole my thunder to recognize the participants who were here from the folks from Audubon and from EQUA. So thanks to them for being involved in this and for reaching out to us about this in advance. I'd love to hear from folks by email about issues that are important, and they definitely reached out about this, and I'm thankful to that. If nobody else has any other questions or comments about this item, it's my understanding, Ms. Young, that the appropriate thing for us to do now is to accept a motion to adopt these changes. Is that correct?
That is correct. This is one of the items specifically called out in the ordinance that needs a formal action from you all.
Awesome. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
So moved by Commissioner Jacobs. I'll accept your motion as a second. Councilmember Middleton, if that's all right with you.
Yes,
awesome. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Reese.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Aye.
Councilmember Caballero.
Aye.
Commissioner Reckow.
Aye.
Councilmember Middleton.
I vote aye.
Commissioner Howerton.
Aye.
Planning Commissioner Member Busby.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Fantastic. Thanks again to you, Danny, and your team for the hard work you put into getting this done. So congratulations and thanks.
You're very welcome.
All right, our last item on the agenda before we adjourn is item number 9, industrial land use study. Am I gonna? Yes, Brooke Ganser is on the agenda. And finally, I love it when those two things match because then that's a very easy segue into you. So please take it away.
Brooke, I think you're on mute.
Still muted. Nope, you muted yourself again.
Okay, sorry about that. I think some people are trying to unmute me and I muted myself again. So hello, my name is Brooke and I'm going to be reviewing the 2020 Industrial Land Use Study with you today. This is an update and expansion upon the 2013 Industrial Land Use Study. and I'm with the City and County Planning Department, specifically the Policy and Urban Design Group. So today I will be going over the purpose of this study, guiding policies, directing this study, future industrial employment projections, how we calculated land demand and carried out a suitability analysis, and then lastly, just some key study findings. So the purpose of the industrial land study is to determine how much industrial land will be demanded in the future and which areas designated industrial by the comprehensive plan are the most optimal for industrial development. So understanding demand and suitability of industrial land areas will help inform decisions on where industrial development should occur. So here are just some comprehensive plan policies which direct the creation of the industrial land study. Industrial is defined as land used for manufacturing, processing, warehousing, etc. The second policy directs staff to carry out the industrial land study. So industrial employment projections were found using the 2050 Woods and Pool forecasts. A key takeaway is that industrial employment has remained relatively constant from 2010 to 2050. And there are approximately 43,000 projected industrial employees for the year 2050. The number of employees projected for 2050 was multiplied by 0.01, and this number is the square footage of industrial space per employee. That 0.01 was determined by using tax assessor data for occupied building space and 2019 industrial employee projections. So the industrial land demand for the year 2050 was calculated to be approximately 470 acres. The suitability of industrial land was determined through 9 different metrics. 6 of those metrics, such as vacancy, utilities, access to major road and railroad, acreage, and clustering, those metrics were used in a scoring system to rate all industrial areas in Durham. And these criteria were given a numerical score. So the final and total scores ranged from 0 to 14, with 14 being the most suitable. Additionally, 3 other criteria were used in the analysis to determine which industrial areas would need additional development requirements to preserve and protect environmental and residential areas, along with ensuring equitable development. And just to note, this list was developed in conjunction with the Greater Durham Chamber of Commerce. So here are some of the suitability criteria shown in map form. Just to note, those starred are not pictured. So here we have the water service areas, sewer service area, areas within 1/2 mile of a railroad, 1/2 mile of a major road, and then the supplementary criteria, again, were considered environmental, residential, and equity standards. And just for a little more information into the equity criteria, 6 equity measures were used to highlight where there may be equity concerns for the industrial areas. These are found on the left-hand side. Areas were flagged if they exceeded the corresponding Durham County statistic. So now we're just going to go into the suitability analysis results. So again, the possible total scores for the suitability analysis range from 0 to 14, again with 14 being the most suitable. There were 5 areas found to be most suitable within Durham. So this map shows the most suitable areas in green.
Overall, there were 6,948 acres scoring 12 or higher. And you can see the breakdown on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, sorry. So some key study findings. This study found that by the year 2050, the total projected industrial employees will be 43,176 workers, and projected total acreage of industrial land demand will be 470 acres. Additionally, a suitability analysis which rated and scored all flume industrial areas determined which areas are more well-suited for industrial development. And it was found that there are about 3,000 acres of highly suitable industrial land. So those areas scoring 14. So therefore, Durham County has a surplus of flume industrial land to accommodate 2050 projections. And I just wanted to note some assumptions this study made. Those are that vacant areas are more suitable than occupied areas. Industrial areas have direct access to roads and railroads in a half-mile proximity, and all listed criteria in this study represent all potential limiting factors that determine suitability of industrial land. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Ganser. Appreciate that. Also, really appreciate how well your presentation aligned with the actual report. That was really cool and made it very easy to follow. So thanks for that. Our role in this particular item is to receive the information. So I'm going to ask committee members if anyone has any questions or comments. Commissioner Howerton, please go right ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for such a great presentation. Could you go back to the slide again? I had a question. I think it's in the 5 most suitable areas. Can you pull that back up again?
Yes.
So I couldn't determine which areas they were.
Yes, so those areas are highlighted in green on this map.
Okay, they're in green. I guess I was looking at the chart. Suitable scores.
Yes, so at the bottom of the chart, that is showing the suitability score correlated to the acreage of the area, of the industrial area.
Okay, I guess I can't see the bottom of that chart.
Oh,
is it my?
This should also be in the industrial land study report that's attached as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Howerton, the bottom of the slide, the last suitability score is 14. Right now on my screen, it's cut off at 12, but I believe the last suitability score.
Yeah, mine cuts off at 13.
Okay.
Maybe if you went out of full screen mode on the presentation, it might show us the rest of it.
Yeah, I couldn't see the rest of it.
And then scroll,
Okay.
yeah.
Does that help?
No.
I think the issue is you have to make the picture disappear. So if you press, oh, there you go. Also, if we make the picture disappear.
Okay. So I see 14. Can you tell us in what part of Durham that is?
Yes, so it is the western part. You can see it on the map of Durham here, and the eastern and southeastern parts of Durham.
So it's the parts of the maps colored in green, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, it's just that, with the county, jobs are so necessary, and manufacturing is going to be really one of the areas that we really have to focus on. And just wanting to know what part of Durham that lands in.
Commissioner Howerton, this is Scott Whiteman. The areas where most of the high scored property is located, it's kind of the Junction Road corridor in East Durham, the TW Alexander Miami Boulevard area in Southeast Durham, and then the South Alston corridor south of down in kind of South Central Durham.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I follow up on that?
Absolutely. Go right ahead, Commissioner Redcow.
So you didn't mention Trayburn at all. Is any of this suitable land in the Trayburn Corporate Park or not?
Commissioner Redcow, there is still some suitable land in the Trayburn Corporate Park. I think the surprising thing that we learned from the Chamber of Commerce when putting this together was how important, even in 2020, access to rail is for manufacturing uses. And since there isn't an active rail line in Trayburn Corporate Park, it doesn't score as high as some of the areas down along the two active rail lines in Durham.
Interesting. And if I could follow up with a couple of other questions. So I was around in 2013 when the last study was done. And of course, the results are greatly different from the last study where there was a recommendation that we needed about 1,000 acres more of additional industrial land. So I just want to bore in a little bit. I noticed in the study that I think it's on page 6, the definition of industry is one that I just want to try to understand. It doesn't include biopharma manufacturing. For instance, would the Merck vaccine plant in Trayburn be considered an industry?
So Brooke, tell me if I'm wrong, but it does include all types of manufacturing, including biopharma. So Merck would be included.
Correct. That's my understanding as well.
And so the reason I'm asking is, and I believe Brenda and Wendy would concur, we've actually had, what we're seeing is a flattening of the number of people employed and whatever, but as that's occurred, we've seen expansion at Merck, 2 expansions just in the last few years. We've seen expansion at AW North Carolina that makes the transmissions for Toyota cars, and many other smaller industries that do manufacturing. We've actually had very fertile year with a number of announcements. So I don't know if there's been countervailing downsizing that has offset those increases, but I did find it a little startling. So I was wondering if it was a definitional issue in terms of how things are counted.
I don't think it's a definitional issue. I think, reevaluating the trends, looking at those industrial employment projections and the amount of land that we have available, which is suitable. So I think those definitions are correct.
Yeah.
So I just want to understand a little bit more. Brooke, your data, what is the most recent year of your data? Because I know sometimes there's lags. So Just want to get a sense.
Right. So we use the 2050 Woods and Pool employee projections. And then we also use the most recent tax assessor data.
And Brooke,
But
that
in
data
terms
was,
of number of employees, what data did you use to estimate where we were now?
So we use the Woods and Pool 2050 population and employment forecast from 2019.
So their employment data, you're saying they got that it was taken, or it's verified for 2019, just 1 year ago?
Yes, I believe that's the case. I can look that up as well.
Because, you know, I'm trying to do a reality check. And Wendy, you know, I don't know if you're feeling some of the same things that I am in terms of the announcements that we've had and the growth we've seen in a variety of sectors that would make me question this. But
do you want me to chime in, Commissioner?
Yeah, why don't you? Because I'm waiting for her to look at the data.
I know you're calling in, but I'm sitting here nodding because I agree with you. I was very surprised to see that 30 years from now, the projection would be that we only would have about 3,000 more manufacturing workers than we do today. It just doesn't really click with me because we have been so fortunate in Durham County over the past 3 years. We have had so many expansions and also new locations as well of advanced manufacturing and life science, biopharma. 40% of the life science and biopharma manufacturing in the state is in Durham County. And we see this in Trayburn and also in RTP. And I guess I note one of the assumptions, Brooke, that you said is that you're also looking at that vacant land is more suitable. I would say that probably it would be interesting to know what percentage of the projects just in the last 3 years have actually been retrofits. We're seeing, and I would like to hear the chamber's input on this, what we're seeing is companies that are coming in and redeveloping sites in RTP. And so I don't know if that assumption is correct, that it's easier and cheaper to do something that is on vacant land. It actually may be that I'd be interested to know that our companies really, is it best for them to look at vacant, or are they really better for them to redevelop? And the other thing is just even that the type of manufacturing that we have nowadays doesn't necessarily always need the same amount of acreage, I guess, because of the different types of manufacturing. But yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner Reckow. I was very surprised at this. And the other thing that I really think about too is even the direction that manufacturing is going in, where we're seeing the trend in RTP and with the hub, that there's now a movement towards more work, live, play manufacturing to integrate advanced manufacturing into places where people actually do live. And because manufacturing isn't always polluting the way it used to be, or making noise or things like that, that would be considered environmentally not sensitive or having a racial justice impact, that flipping it around and saying, we want these places to be located where people are actually living so they can actually get to these jobs. So I don't know, it just really opened up a lot of questions to me. about some of our assumptions when we think about manufacturing jobs, because things have just changed so much in the last few years.
Yes, and I'll just say, you know, this is a tool to kind of help us while looking at, you know, does this area need to be rezoned, or if there's a redesignation and process, you know, this is the first step to kind of get a general idea of that site. There's definitely further research that needs to be done by planners to you know, look into that specific site for consideration. And the assumptions, yes, definitely, I think you have really great points with the retrofitting. That's, you know, something that we could potentially make a note of as well. And I did just want to go back. The 2050 woods and pool estimates are, I can confirm that those are from 2019, and it's the same data used by the MPO.
And Commissioner Jacobs, if I could just add on to what Brooke said, and Commissioner Recco, this goes to some of your questions. So the main thing this study will be used for, and what the 2013 study was used for, was when the planning department gets either actual applications or pre-submittal applications for zoning changes and future land use map changes. When someone wants to change something from industrial to something else, usually it's residential, because as you all know, that's what's really hot these days. And so this is a tool for particularly for vacant land, because that's where new development of all types wants to go first. Is this something that for a larger scale industrial user, the city and county should hold on to, so that we don't, give it away based on what is kind of the market wants right now. That doesn't mean that properties in Trayburn and the park, we didn't actually include RTP in this analysis since it's kind of its own animal. But just when we're analyzing a change from industrial to something else, we can provide you information of whether or not it is this a good industrial site that we need to hold on to and keep industrial, or is this a site that would be really difficult to develop with a large scale industrial use. And then the other thing I wanted to add is there are also, these are for larger scale industrial things like manufacturing. There are lots of smaller scale manufacturing things, uses that don't need these big sites. And so those are a lot harder to capture in a broad study, but there are definitely things we need to accommodate through the comprehensive plan, since they're where our kind of smaller entrepreneurs will kind of start their businesses.
So if I could get some clarification on what you just said, are you saying then that this study largely focused on inside the city and left Trayburn and RTP out?
So it focused on areas that can be served by sewer, which is mostly in the city, but it does include Trayburn. It's just that RTP is such a strange animal with its own covenants and all that, that it wasn't included as part of the analysis.
Okay. But the other interesting thing, of course, is the tentacles coming out from RTP, because a lot of our manufacturing is also north of formal RTP, but in the general RTP area, like Chinpage Road and Miami Boulevard area and whatever. I guess I just don't want us to shortchange manufacturing. Manufacturing actually has one of the biggest multipliers from an economic viewpoint that a community can have. And our manufacturing jobs, in fact, we're really working right now with Durham Technical Community College to prepare our young people to take some of these manufacturing jobs straight out of high school or with an associate's degree, because they can move into jobs that are high wage, high benefit, etc., very, very quickly. And this is, we view it as an economic mobility issue. So, and Durham County has the highest weekly wages in the entire state. we've had that accolade for going back 20 years. And a lot of it driven by RTP, the presence of the companies in RTP, our high wage manufacturing jobs, and also Duke. But I would just say to you that I hope we will vet this report. I don't know if the Chamber of Commerce has reviewed it and whatever, but let's just, I don't want us to make, because I would assume this report will feed into the assumptions as we do our comprehensive plan on what colors go on the map for future land use. And I just want us to be sure that we're not shortchanging the industrial category. Obviously, we can be receptive to rezoning changes if the market proves us our assumptions wrong. And maybe we overshot the mark with the 2013 study, but downsizing to the degree that we're talking about by over 1,000 acres seems a lot. So just want to put a pin in it. Maybe we could do some more vetting of this before any final decisions are made.
And Commissioner Recap, I could just echo what you said. I totally agree with you. We have, in our board, the county commissioners, we have been very, very focused on these manufacturing jobs. I can't tell you how fortunate we have been in the economic incentive projects that we have been involved with over the past 4 years. And the reason why our board has been supportive of these projects because they have such a wide range of pathways to people who just have like a high school degree and can start out making $50,000 a year. And you know, every single project we've been involved with, it has you know, a wide range of jobs at every education level, but they all are good paying jobs. And there's a lot of mobility within these companies to move up. And so I agree with you, Commissioner Recca. We really don't want to undershoot, and especially Durham County is so small. We just are very limited in our land. And I know, you know, you in the study notes that there are not a lot of sites that are large sites over 100 acres. But I did note, and Brooke, if you can confirm that there were 17 sites that were over 150 acres. Is that correct? Yeah. So it seems like we had less that were between 100 and 50, but more that were over 150. So we really want to protect also the large sites, because that's where you can get into some of the really, I mean, Corning and Merck that are on RTP now, they're both expanding. They are both adding hundreds of jobs because they are part of Operation Warp Speed right now, making these vaccines for COVID. And they're massive. If you haven't been out there, everybody, go out there. It's a whole new world out there. They're vast and they need a lot of land. So we do really especially want to protect these large acreage sites. So I think you've heard enough from both of us about this. And just ask you to please consult with the chamber and Durham Tech as well on this.
So Scott, can you tell us what's the process? What happens now?
So this is just, this is an internal informational document. So we can take the feedback we received. We did provide this to the chamber, and we did get, they were, I think, agreed with our findings, but based on some of the comments we've heard from Commissioner Jacobs and Commissioner Reckow, we can certainly review that with them and see if there's anything we missed, and if there are kind of other criteria of sites that we need to make sure we hold on to, particularly when we're working on the comprehensive plan. So this is not an adopted plan, so there's no official action that needs to be taken, but we certainly appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Middleton, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to continue just a little bit in the spirit of vetting of the report. So I thank my colleagues who have gone before me. Brooke, good to see you. Firstly, just for purposes of full disclosure, I viewed the presentation with a great sense of personal vestedness. A lot of that green area represents some very important touch points in my life. I work in the green area. I live in the green area. I represent a great deal of the green area, at least nominally by virtue of being the Ward 2 rep, although we're all elected by the entire city. That much of that area falls in Ward 2, so I'm greatly vested. I've watched a lot of change. I live right off of Miami and Alexander. I've watched a lot of change, including the disappearance of a golf course that I used to be able to walk to. I'm still in my feelings about that, but that's another meeting. I want to ask about the last paragraph where it says, additionally, other criteria were used to measure suitability, which were not included in the suitability analysis scoring system. The metrics included proximity to residential area, environmental constraints, equity considerations. Of course, I'm very glad to see equity considerations. Historically, oftentimes, some of the most egregious and harmful things that have been done to marginalized communities have been wrapped in scientific method. They were given the veneer of, well, this is just what the data and the math lead us to do. So I'm curious, when it says other criteria were used to measure suitability, but it wasn't included in the suitability analysis. So how was that other data operationalized? What was the impact of that other data in the actual product? Can you reconcile that for me?
Yes, so it wasn't included in the actual suitability analysis, but it is flagged for consideration. So with the equity criteria, it's a pretty simplified version to help bring planners' attention to potential equity, environmental, and residential concerns. Our intention was to flag those areas and call for further research into potential consequences of building industrial or other developments in those areas, which were flagged.
So is it safe to say that it's really going to be up to decision makers, folk like us in the future, who get the hard number that was arrived at through the metrics and the math to ensure that equity is looked out for in environmental issues? In other words, it's not going to be baked into the sustainability score. Is that a suitability score? I'm sorry. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, that's correct. When you have a decision to make, we can say, well, it scored 14, which is the top for an industrial parcel, but it also has an equity score of 6. So that means there are definitely equity concerns. And so we need to be careful of that before we put another cement plant in East Durham or something like that. So that's how it's intended to be used. And Brooke has made a GIS layer that will just so that anyone can look at the score and for both the industrial suitability score and for the supplemental criteria so that all the information is available.
Very helpful. Thank you all for great work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Middleton, for those important questions. Any other committee members have questions or comments about this report? This is your opportunity to raise your hand and wave at me so that I know it's your turn to talk. If you don't raise your hand and wave at me, you will not get a turn to talk. Commissioner Jacobs, you've turned off on your microphone. Does that mean you'd like to say something else?
Well, I don't know. This discussion really triggers for me, like the changes that we're even seeing around the concept of industrial land. Like right now, what we're grappling with is that one of our major industrial parks, Trayburn, is next to a really affluent area and is really far away from, it's hard for people to get to, and we've got transportation barriers. And just the idea of, what I was trying to say before is just changing how we think about this. And and again, what we're seeing in RTP with the hub is just now people want to live closer to where they work. And we want to try to make these job opportunities more accessible to people. And so how do we even develop industrial areas so that they are more friendly to residential areas? I mean, anyone who's been at Treyburn can see it's beautifully landscaped. There's walking paths. Again, it's next to a very affluent, beautiful residential development. So do we need to be just thinking about this in a more holistic way as well? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. Those are just some of the things I'm thinking about.
Ms. Young, did you want to add something here?
Yes, thank you. I think Commissioner Jacobs brings up a great point that we hope to tackle through the comprehensive plan, which is the evolving nature of some of our land uses. And certainly industrial today is not all like the industrial of yesteryear that really kind of created divisions in land use and zoning and separation of uses. So that's one thing that we will be looking towards. And remember that when the comp plan is all said and done, we will also be making changes to our ordinance to jive with that. So I could definitely see some changes to our categories of the different types of industrial and what their real land use ramifications are and impacts on properties are. Because I do agree with you that, a lot of what you see up in Treyburn, a lot of what you see in RTP does not fit the mold of kind of traditional noxious industrial uses. So we are going to be definitely revisiting what that means in our modern society.
Thank you, Sarah. And I think when from a planning and zoning point of what are the things that we need to require so that they are like that, right? What are the requirements about how they're built and the way they look and feel, and again, that make it so that they are pleasant to live near or people, to walk to or whatever. So I think that, getting into that will be really helpful from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobs. I just wanted to add one small thing, which is that it's my expectation that now that this analysis is here and available to staff, that staff will share anytime we have a proposal in front of us to eliminate industrial zoning in a piece of property, that you'll share with us the suitability score so that we can make a better informed decision about that particular proposal. Is that how this will be used?
That's correct. Yep.
That's fantastic. I think that's very, very useful. And obviously, as my colleagues have pointed out today, we're going to bring in lots of other information about, it's not, the number isn't the only thing that's going to drive the decision about whether or not to approve a rezoning or a change to the FLUM. But I think this is a good kind of important part of the puzzle, and I look forward to seeing it in use, and also appreciate my colleagues from the County Commission emphasizing the importance of industrial employment in not just our past and present, but also in the future of Durham, and appreciate their work in making that happen in the last few years. If no one else has any questions or comments about this report, I want to thank staff for bringing it forward, and thank you for all your hard work in doing that, and say that is the last item on our agenda for today. The estimated length of the meeting was 1 hour and 50 minutes. We went over by 4 minutes, but I think the time that we spent on that last agenda item, number 9, was really important. And so if no one has anything else they would like to say or raise this morning, I'm looking. Okay, then I will call this meeting adjourned at 11:24 a.m. and thank everyone for their participation. Look forward to seeing you in a couple of months. Take care.